What's up, everybody? I'm David Hain. Welcome to episode 153 of the A to D from Addict to Disciple podcast. If you enjoy this podcast, please like, subscribe, follow, and share the link with your friends, or click on the support link in this episode's description. Your donation of any amount could change a life. If you'd like to get our curriculum, you can get the paperback or ebook of From Ashes to Destiny on Amazon. When we come back, we'll get into this episode entitled Approval Addiction. Welcome back to episode 153 of the A to D from Addict to Disciple podcast entitled Approval Addiction. So, what is approval addiction? Do you spend every day seeking approval, affirmation, or validation? Do you need to get approval right now, on the spot, or else you spiral into other negative behaviors or depression? What is it like to live without approval for even just one day? Do you begin to question whether you are worthy of approval? Do you often find yourself thinking back to your childhood when you were lacking much needed approval from your parents or teachers, but it seemed whatever you did was never good enough? Or perhaps you were showered with approval as a child, but as an adult, you hunger to get that again because mom and dad are not around telling you how great you are. Well, approval addiction is defined as an intense desire to win the approval of those around you and avoid feelings of rejection at all costs. So this approval addiction leads to many behaviors that may look like our addiction or may just be bad behaviors that we fall into because we do whatever we can to avoid the feelings of rejection. You got it from the definition. You're avoiding rejection at all costs. So we don't even count the cost. Joyce Meyer wrote in her book, Approval Addiction, and I quote, "There's an epidemic of insecurity in society today. Many people suffer from an unhealthy need for affirmation. They are not capable of feeling good about themselves. For some, the quest for approval becomes an actual addiction, as they seek self-worth from the outside world because they can't find it within themselves." Does that sound like you? Are you caught up in that time when you can't find approval inside and you're engaged in all kinds of unhealthy behaviors to find it from the outside world? And it's an unhealthy need for affirmation. And Joyce Meyer says it's become an epidemic in today's society, an epidemic of insecurity. Do you feel insecure when you don't get affirmation or approval from people around you? Not even just people who are important to you, but from anyone around you. John D. Kelly IV from the University of Pennsylvania, a doctor, wrote in Your Best Life, Overcoming Approval Addiction, which you can find on the website nih.gov. He wrote more questions for us to think about as we reflect on ourselves around this topic. Did we not feel smart enough? Did we feel ignored at home? Are we approval addicts? And he warned that for approval addicts, there is no lasting peace. Wow, can you get that? This insecurity that Joyce Meyer talked about settles into us to a point where there's just no lasting peace. And we think we find peace when we get approval and affirmation. So Dr. Kelly sees the way to overcome approval addiction as coming from a recognition of our own intrinsic worth and aligning that with our purpose and meaning. So we need to start the journey of healing with the destination of finding purpose and meaning in our life, while at the same time uncovering our self-worth, which may be buried so deep and so long inside of us. Aristotle reminds us in a quote, "Happiness is a quality of the soul, not a function of one's material circumstances." And I think this is key here, because the best place to start this search for meaning and purpose is to look inside yourself, accept yourself, find value in yourself, find happiness in your soul, rather than seeking happiness through the affirmation, approval, and acceptance of other people. And when you get there, you begin to say, "I am worthy," instead of saying, "No one really likes me. No one ever likes what I do." So how do we overcome approval addiction? I got 5 steps from fairygodboss.com in their article, 5 Ways to Overcome Your Approval Addiction. And I'll go through them here. The first is, ask yourself why you're seeking someone's approval. So just start at the beginning. Sit down and ask yourself, why am I even seeking this person's approval? Is it really necessary? Do I need it for my little feel-good vitamin of the day? Well, Sammy Rhodes, in his This Is Awkward, wrote from his perspective as a campus minister at the University of South Carolina, and I quote, "Approval is a lover who will always break your heart." Pshaw. By this, he reminds us that even the best approval can be fleeting, and we will get brokenhearted as we feel that glorious moment of approval slip through our fingers, and then that manic sort of search for the next approval settles in, or depression when we can't find it. The second step of how to overcome your approval addiction is reframe others' opinions as merely stories, not statements of fact. You got that? Reframe, rethink the opinions that other people have of you and have spoken to you as just stories, not the truth, not statements of fact. Do you find yourself clinging to the negative comments, judgments, and corrections of other people rather than holding on to the good words? And how do you reframe it then so that you can believe the good words that you hear and just sort of flush the negative comments? Well, for me, is again to know that we look inside, as we just heard from Aristotle's quote, that happiness is a quality of the soul. So we need to look inside. And Fyodor Dostoevsky points out, and I quote, "The greatest happiness is to know the source of unhappiness." So here's 2 good steps. We not only look inside to find our happiness, but we identify the sources of our unhappiness. It's important to know the things that tear you down, the people that tear you down, the phrases that tear you down, especially those phrases that, even though someone you never met is saying them, sounds like someone from your past saying them. Whatever it could be, we need to identify those sounds, those words, those tones of voice that bring us down, bring unhappiness, in order to find the true happiness inside. The third step is define what you want and pursue it. So we need to look inside to determine and define our purpose. We need to define what we want in life and to find the strength to pursue it. Confucius points out, and I quote, "What the superior man seeks is in himself. What the small man seeks is in others." So I want to challenge you. Have you been seeking what other people have, or have you been seeking other people to do the hard work for you, or to cast their vision upon you, or that you can walk in their vision or their dreams for you? Well, Confucius says that's a small man that seeks stuff in others. The superior man, what he seeks is in himself. The fourth step, replace irrational beliefs with positive ones. Our irrational beliefs are often based on things about yourself that aren't true. And we have to be able to, just as we listed those things that can tear us down, those comments and opinions that just undermine us, we have to begin to write down our irrational beliefs, and we may not know they're irrational when we write them down. So we need to write them down, bounce them off a coach, a counselor, a mentor, and get their feedback to see if they're real or if they're irrational. Oprah Winfrey said, and I quote, "There's a difference between thinking you deserve to be happy and knowing that you are worthy of being happy. Your being alive makes worthiness your birthright. You alone are enough." Can you hear that? Your worthiness is your birthright. You alone are enough. Stop just thinking you deserve to be happy and sort of dragging around trying to find it, or bouncing around like a ball in a pinball machine. Know that you're worthy of being happy. Seek it inside. Find your meaning and your purpose, and then get the strength to pursue it. And the fifth and final step is sort of a recap. It says, develop and repeat a self-affirming mantra. So we develop these new attitudes. We develop this way of self-reflection. We develop this way of differentiating between happiness and unhappiness. We develop this way of differentiating between negative thoughts, which we just let go or flush, and the positive thoughts that we hold on to. And then we just keep repeating it as a habit, as a routine that we do on a daily, weekly basis. And I want to urge you to dream again as you're doing that, and be positive about reaching your goals and pursuing them. And I'd like to close today with a poem by Langston Hughes entitled Harlem. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode? And I want to close with asking, have many of your dreams exploded as you've sought approval and saw it slip through your hands? Well, it's time to really stop deferring your dreams and seek for them in the right places. Thanks for listening to this episode of the A to D from Addict to Disciple podcast. If you would like to join an online group or get one-on-one counseling to help with your approval addiction, please message me on the link in this podcast or by email at davidfromatod@gmail.com, or go to my website www.fromatod.org and click on the contact page. You can keep in touch with what we're doing in From A to D by following me on Instagram at davidfromatod. For our Spotify listeners, you can leave your comments by clicking on the link that they provide on that platform. Tune in Monday for our next episode, and as always, stay safe and stay strong.